Hi everyone, it's Jan from Jan Plans Things and welcome to my Plan With Me video for October. So this week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be using these stamps which I got from Bunbogu, Australia, and they do ship worldwide. So they were nice enough to send me these stamps to try, and when I showed them on my Instagram stories earlier this week, you guys really liked them. So a lot of you asked how I was going to use them in a spread. So these are transparent stamps and you use that little acrylic block and you attach them to the back. I'm going to be using this this Japanese ink, which is quite interesting because it's a hexagon shape, so I think it'll be really handy for just applying it to very specific parts of the stamps. So the transparent stamps, you stick to the back of an acrylic block and you can kind of see how they look. You can kind of see how I've added a little bit of paper on the back, because what I realized is the stamps work better because the acrylic block is so rigid. The stamp works better if the back of the paper is flat, but the problem is that when you're using a notebook, especially at the beginning, the pages kind of dip a little bit. So I've tried to put a little bit of paper underneath to mitigate the skipping of the stamp, but you can kind of see here that didn't work exactly. So I'm just filling in any details that the stamp has mixed with a little bit of black ink from my Rotring. So I'm just filling in, I'm just referencing the image on the envelope or the stamp and then just filling in the details that way. What I did at the very beginning was I kind of just drew a half circle with a compass, and that grey lead line is acting as my guideline on how to build the wreath. Now you can kind of see me applying the ink to the stamps, and I'm just careful to put a little bit on at a time, and sometimes I'm only using parts of the stamp, especially if I want a little bit more detail in any points, and because sometimes if I use the entire stamp, it's more likely that a lot of the ink will skip because of how not flat the paper is. I mean, I think it'll work perfectly if you're using like just a flat piece of card, like if you're making you know, gift cards or anything like that, then it wouldn't be a problem. But because I'm using it on a journal, I'm just going to try and limit the amount that I'm putting on, and I'm just slowly applying the stamps around the wreath. The ink itself, I think it's called Shachi Hata. Oh man, I'm so sorry if I ruined that, but I'll link it down below. That ink pad is actually water, it's actually water-based, so in theory watercolor shouldn't work with this, but I had a little test and I found that if I applied the ink pad and then I waited 30 minutes afterwards, then I could paint on it. So I'm going to take a little break after I finish stamping and drawing, and then probably eat dinner, and then I'll come back and I'll paint on it, and I think it should work fine. So what I'm doing now, after I've stamped a few of the initial flowers, I'm leaving the front of the stamped envelope because it shows the designs of the cotton flowers on it up the top there, so I can reference the style, and I'm just copying that to kind of fill in the twigs and just put in a couple of leaves as well to fill out the overall look of the wreath. And I'm using my Rotring pens. I met up with, I think I mentioned this before, I met up with Shane Chan and Peppercorn Arts on our journal meetup, and Shane was using the Rotrings, and I have used Rotrings in the past because I am an architect, but I tried to not use those for a while because like they're kind of like the pen of trauma right next to the Copic multiliners, because I use them so much, and there's so much of my life which is spent like unclogging the Rotring pen. But that being said, if you know, they are excellent pens. I've had my pens for around 10 years now, and they were gifted to me by my dad, and he had his pens since I think 1983 because he started as an engineer when he came to Australia. So that's like 35 years of pen that's still working. So it's been interesting seeing the comparison, because I picked up a new set from Bunbogu which had some thicknesses which I didn't have before, and it was nice to see how the pen quality, like the nib is still the same, but they have made a few revisions to the design, probably to make it a little bit more affordable, because those pens, they were so expensive when I was in school because they last a really long time. So I'm finding that they're still working, and so at the moment what I'm doing now is I'm going back and just filling up a few more of the flowers because I found that the left-hand side was a little bit empty. You can kind of see there with the one I just stamped, the twig in the middle skipped, and I found that I was having more trouble stamping on the left-hand side because that had fewer pages on the journal than I did on the right, probably. So that's probably why I had so many more flowers on the right-hand side compared to the left-hand side. So that's just something to consider. The Rotring ink that I'm using is water fast, so I can paint on that without any problems. And I'm using a mixture of the 0.3 and the 0.1 pen to get the details because I needed the 0.1 to match thinness of some of the details in the stamps. So stamps are pretty fun to use. I don't use them as often because the stamp pad that I had before, which is something I just bought from like Spotlight, which I think is equivalent to your Michaels in America, that just like destroyed my paper. Like the ink just kind of sunk right through. So I'm actually kind of pleased with this stamp pad because I found that it was pretty gentle on my pages. I tested a little bit in the Leuchtturm, it didn't bleed through, which is fantastic. Of course, the Archer and Olive notebook that I'm using at the moment is a much more resilient notebook, so I didn't expect any bleeding at all, especially because it didn't go through on the Leuchtturm. I'm extending a few of the twigs upwards, and I'm going to be using the end of those twigs to have the little date bubbles. And I think that kind of works because I did a similar-ish half circle design once in my August monthly. What you just saw then was the new Tombow Fudenosuke hard tip pen set. So they finally came out with a couple of colors, which is fantastic. And I think it's really nice. I'm hoping they go down the track of mild liners or the other Tombow brush pens and just release more colors because they are my favorite lettering pen. At the moment, the colors are a little bit primary for me, but you can mix them by doing that plate trick that I showed you guys previously in one of my videos. So I'm just using the hard tip pen now kind of just to color in the middle because I find that if you're using like an ink like that or even watercolor, when you write on it with the white pen, I'm using a Sakura Jelly Roll in white, the color just shows up a little bit stronger. A lot of you asked me if I was changing themes this week, and I decided not to because I just had so much on that I'm also really undecided on the theme because originally I was going to do Harry Potter, but I kind of wanted a break from doing something licensed, that makes sense, or something fandom based because I spent a lot of this month painting Disney things. I wanted just to have a little bit more fun with it, so I'm not sure, and I'd already done Harry Potter in the past, but I might, slide in a few things every now and again. I kind of want to simplify it down because I really enjoyed doing something simple like the ocean or star theme. So if you have any ideas, I'm probably going to be drawing it midweek this week. As you can see now, I'm still using my dot card that I received from Peppercon to do the painting, and I'm using just a brown ochre. I think this one was burnt umber, just to do the browns, and the red is a Venetian red. And I'm using a little bit of the Agallo colors. She has a Morillon. It's like a wine red that's available on her Natural palette that I like to use to do some of the detailed line works on the mushrooms. And I'm also using the burnt umber mixed with a bit of the buff titanium, which is kind of like a creamy, stony white, to create the little shading on the cotton flower. And what I discovered was that when I was painting these paints on, because they're like earth paints, they're a little bit more opaque. So I had to go over it afterwards with a little bit of the Rotring ink just to make the black stand out a little bit more. So that's just something that you can test when you're swatching your paints that I've showed you in the past, but I really wanted these rich earthy colors for this wreath, so that was something that I was kind of prepared to do. I'm also using a little bit of the Mayan Blue number two. No, maybe it's number one, Mayan Blue, to make the blueberries, and that's kind of like an indigo color, but I think the Mayan is actually light fast, which is excellent. I've also managed to order a whole bunch of synthetic brushes, which hopefully will come within the next fortnight, so I can review those for you guys, because so many of you have asked for a more animal-friendly brush, because I do use sables, and it would be great if I could find some really nice synthetics. I do have some that I really like, which is the Silver Brush, the Voyage pens. So I'm planning to try some more synthetics, and they're also just friendlier on your wallet. So that's that. And for those of you who asked, my cover is from Hobonichi this week, and it's a zip cover because I kind of love being able to keep everything together, because I can fit some cards and a pen in the pen loop as well. So that kind of goes through the this basic cover, and this basic spread. And I always like to think, if you look at the stamp and you can see what part of the stamp you can use, because sometimes you don't have to use the whole stamp, you might be able to create something really cool with it. Like a lot of people were unsure like how you would use it to make a wreath, because it looks more like something you'd kind of just do on the edge of the paper. But if you don't ink the entire way down the stamp, you can use it a little bit more like flexibly. And I hope you guys found that useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week and with a new theme. So thanks a lot, and see you soon. Bye.